call in order the September 24th, 2020 meeting of the Haddonfield Board of Education. Mr. Catalano, please take roll.
Mr. Bedford.
Here.
Ms. Crooked.
Here.
Ms. Hogue.
Here.
Ms. Hogurl.
Here.
Ms. Kuttner.
Here.
Ms. Paoli.
Here.
Mr. Vecchio.
Here.
Vice President Seidel.
Here.
President Sandro is absent.
All right, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mike, please read the statement of open public meetings.
Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Superintendent of Schools in the following manner. On January 10th, 2020, notice of this meeting was posted on the interior of the school administration offices, 1 Lincoln Avenue, Haddonfield. Written notice was submitted and followed the Haddonfield Borough Clerk, and notices were faxed to the Courier Post and mailed to the Retrospect newspaper.
Thank you. The board was in executive session from 6:32 to 6:59. We discussed legal and contractual issues. We're going to move through the agenda pretty quickly. I do miss the students, Chuck.
Yeah, well, we should talk about getting these student reports back. And I know accommodations will be difficult because of the in-person, but I don't see why we can't have the student representatives join the Google Meet and present.
Yeah, just get a feeling for the student body, how they're
So-
feeling about school.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we get students in for the October meetings. Start it up again.
Okay, great. So we're going to move right to presentation. We asked for an update to the district goals. I'll turn it over to Gino to be the MC.
All right, thank you, Vice President Seidel. I'm actually going to punt it on over to Chuck, who's
Chuck.
going to give us our opening.
Oh, sorry, Chuck.
That's all right.
And then we will do our goals.
So we are revisiting our strategic plan goals. You know, about 20 months ago, we finalized the goals of a big project of bringing in stakeholders, students, parents, board members, teachers, to decide where we wanted to go as a district. And we came up with our 3 goals, and we've been working on them for the last 20 months. And usually in the summer, we would revisit those, but we had a different summer than usual. But it's important as a district, as we are in fairness, of survival mode to a certain degree, not to lose sight of what our real mission is, which is growing and educating and progressing as a district. So we are going to revisit those. And I think we're going to see in the board meetings coming up, hopefully we'll be talking a lot less about COVID and a lot more about education, a lot more about where we want to go as a district. So we're going to talk about the goals this month, next month. I'm going to talk about our program, which is going to develop the vision of a graduate. So we have a lot of those good things coming up. Gino's going to be talking about homework in the near future. And we're going to get back to our business of education. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Henderson, who's going to talk about the cultural competency, cultural responsiveness, because part of this reboot is a relook at what that goal is. So go ahead, Carmen. Did I go out of order?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Why don't we start with SEL?
We'll start with SEL. I went out of order. I read vertically rather than horizontally. I got confused by the PowerPoint. So, Dr. Priola.
Thank you very much. So as I said in the past, I'm really excited and passionate to be the lead admin on this topic. It's something very near and dear to my heart, both personally and professionally. And I'm really excited with the SEL teams that we have to work with in district that consist of our administrators and our teachers. So our SEL goal, the overarching goal, just talks about nurturing self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship skills, responsible decision-making to ensure the social and emotional well-being of our learners. Now, our overall plan is a 5-phase plan, and we are currently in phase 3. And what I've done as part of this presentation to make it a bit more concise, I'm going to provide some of just the bullet point overview pieces of information. And anyone who would like additional information, there are links to the more comprehensive plan. So for example, where I talk about a 5-phase plan, if you really want to have a better understanding of what those discrete action steps are. There's a link to the blueprint for strategic goals for social emotional learning. That is essentially a 2 to 3 year plan. So again, we're in phase 3, which is faculty, staff, personal, and professional learning. We intend to be in this phase until December. So a brief review of a summary of what has been achieved thus far. Now, there are certainly more things that we have done. I'm just including really the highlight bullet items. We really began this journey a little over a year ago with myself, Dr. Loren, and Mrs. Bushy. We completed a 2-day ruler training institute at Yale University. In November, we completed baseline data to help measure what our progress is with this program and with our approach. We started with staff overview training in January. Actually, that's January of 2020. There's a typo there. In February of 2020, we created school-based ruler teams. Now, once again, ruler is the approach and framework that we use for our social emotional teaching. It is an evidence-based framework that is out of Yale University's Center for Social and Emotional Wellness. Ruler stands for recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions. So we created a 3-person ruler team in each school. That means that we have nearly 20 staff members in the district that have been formally trained in the ruler framework. And that includes a 2-day intensive workshop. 3 of us went to Yale when we were first exploring it and did the 2-day training. And then we had 3 member teams from each school complete a 6-week online institute. And those are the 2 major options to have the comprehensive training to be part of a ruler team. It's either the 2-day intensive at Yale or the 6-week online program. Then in March 2020, we established a relationship with Temple University's Child and Adolescent Anxiety Disorders Clinic. We provided a virtual parent workshop on recognizing anxiety. And then in May 2020, our school-based ruler teams began the formal teacher training process. And to understand this, the formal teacher training process involves a couple different major points. One is ongoing and systemic professional development from the school-based ruler teams. The second part are online learning modules that our teachers will be starting very soon. So that's a brief summary, and where I talk about highlights of the continuation of phase 3 for this school year, I'm going to highlight 6 key areas. 1, staff training will continue in earnest. Teachers will complete the online ruler training in addition to the school-based professional development as provided by the district and provided by our school-based ruler team. Mental health support, both for our staff and our students. We extended our partnership with the Child and Adolescent Anxiety Disorders Clinic from Temple University. We are implementing a 3-phase plan with Temple. One approach is going to be consultation with our mental health staff, namely our school counselors, where clinicians from the anxiety clinic will be providing consultation to our school-based providers. The second is direct professional development from the executive director of the anxiety clinic with our mental health providers. We have contracted for 12 hours of professional development with those people. 5 hours have already been completed. The other and probably the most exciting part is we refer to this as our boots on the ground plan. We will have 2 clinicians from the anxiety clinic in district 1 day a week, essentially bringing Temple's anxiety clinic to Haddonfield to service students one-on-one. And the third component of the mental health piece is the board-approved employee assistance program, which provides mental health services for our teachers at no cost to them. Not only does it provide those services for all of our staff, but all of the members of their household. So that's our mental health approach. Data collection, as I talked about earlier, we did our baseline collection in November of 2019. In early October, we're going to be rolling out a new survey for our students. It's a student distance learning and well-being survey. It's going to really explore questions like how they are engaging with their online learning, how they feel about the PPE measures that we're implementing here at school, how they feel about the relationships that they are establishing with their teachers and their classmates. And we're also going to do a staff well-being survey on similar topics. And again, the other part, we will be doing a re-administration of the of the same survey that we did in November 2019 at the end of this school year, which will be our pre and post measure of progress. And our goal moving forward is that at the end of every school year, or near the end of every school year, we would re-administer it to help us see if the interventions and programs that we're providing are making positive impacts for our students and our staff. Homework. Homework is a topic that has come up consistently in all student surveys that we have done. It was a recurring theme in our strategic plan surveys that we did for students. We will be forming a district action team to review our homework policy, which is policy 2300. And really, the goal will be to see where we are with our current homework practices and how that is congruent or not with the best and most up-to-date research on the efficacy of homework. Because what we have heard loud and clear from our students, that homework is a significant stressor on them. And we're not here to say that we're going to do away with homework entirely, but we want to ensure that our practices are consistent with the research, with the best evidence-based research. Classroom implementation, we will be implementing developmentally appropriate and comprehensive curriculum that develops students' emotional intelligence. We plan on implementing that somewhere close to after the new year. We will begin developing SEL direct teaching lessons for our students for every grade level, per grade level in the district. And that is part of the ruler framework. Those lessons are part of the ruler framework. Then lastly, the family engagement piece will be establishing ongoing communication with families about ruler in multiple ways, letters, emails, and integrating ruler into events that families already attend. So what we're in the process of doing now with our school-based ruler teams, one member of each of the school-based team will be designated as a parent liaison. So their role will be to focus on parent outreach and communication about our ruler method and other SEL initiatives. And if you want to get more information about these 6 points that I highlighted, there's a link below that will provide access to the 2021 SEL Action Research Plan.
Thank you, Dr. Grohl. And next is Dr. Henderson.
So, first I want to thank Chuck for meeting with me to discuss the district's cultural competence goal. And after talking with Chuck and Dr. Zion from Rowan University, just giving it more consideration is we just decided that probably competence wasn't what we were looking for. So we switched it to cultural responsiveness because we are working our way towards being competent, but we have to do a few things in order for us to get to that level of competence. So our goal in Haddonfield School District is to adopt culturally responsive and sustaining practices throughout the district that are equitable, inclusive, radically transformative, and deviate from Western perspectives. Rowan University's Partnerships for Educational Equity and Research, also known as PEER, will join us in this initiative. And so PEER's core values help us to understand where to start in our goal to achieve equitable practices. So we have to start with ourselves, develop a plan based on data, include all stakeholders, inclusive of your community members, your teachers, and your students, and build local capacity. So it's not enough for us to just address the issue within our schools. We have to start here, but we need to ensure that we are branching out so that this practice can be sustaining. Measuring outcomes. So with all the work that we're going to do with this goal, we need to know if we're moving in the right direction. Adjust and refine. Just because we do it one way initially doesn't mean that we need to sustain the same practice. So we need to know when it's time for us to deviate in order for us to achieve the goal that we set out. Limit attention. So we can't be afraid to talk about all those underliers in race and culture that makes conversations very uncomfortable. Meet people where they are, commit to the long term, and work at the individual and systems level. So some of the accomplishments that Chuck shared with me was the LGBTQI and curricular integration, which was in July 2020. And then we had the administrative retreat with Peer, Dr. Shelley Zion, and the town hall meeting that occurred in August. The town hall meeting, so as a professor with Young Growing University, I actually pulled some of my students in on the town hall meeting. And so that platform was very impressive, not only for the community members, but even for my students who are educators in other places. They really appreciated Haddonfield's ability to tackle something so uncomfortable. And I think that those accomplishments there tells us that we're going in the right direction. So what are our next steps in our equity work? So the plan is to identify a leadership team, identify an equity council, hold a series of all-staff PD sessions. And those PD sessions will focus on unconscious bias training, equitable practices within our community, our school community, and our outside community as well. And then focusing on student action research projects. So with the student action research projects, one of the things that I thought of that would help to make it sustainable is to include our parents in this process and some of our groups that are already embarking on the anti-racist platform. And then partnering in curriculum work with Colleen, with peers involvement. And then I have a link there so you guys can look at like the details outlining each of those steps. So what's our vision? We want to ensure that our learners advance their understanding of our interconnectedness in order to engage meaningfully and respectfully with people of diverse identities, experiences, and points of view. And learners, we're referencing us, we're referencing our students, our teachers, and our community members. It needs to be an all-in effort in order for us to reach this vision. What outcomes are we hoping for with our cultural responsiveness goal? So we want to make sure that we get to the point where we're able to look critically at our structural conditions. Are we doing the things that are necessary for us to sustain those equitable practices that keep in mind the inclusiveness necessary to reach the cultural, responsive, and competent goals that we set out? We need to look critically at individual attitudes. We're not going to have everyone on the same page, but looking at our attitudes and the individual behaviors, and then addressing those will help us to get to where we need to be. And then we need total transformation schools, total transformation of our hearts, and total transformation of our minds. It's an all-in. You can't have any partiality within accomplishing, our goal. You have to be, at each step, you have to be on the same page in order for us to accomplish the goal that we set out.
All right, I'm gonna talk about contemporary learning. I'm excited because I think that all of these goals go so beautifully together, and it's been an enjoyable process. So just to remind you of what the community decided on for this goal, we said that we will empower learners to engage critically in a globally connected world through relevant content, innovative technology, flexible learning environments, and purposeful experiences. These are the highlights of the action steps that we'll be taking over the next year and into next fall. Visioning work, Chuck alluded to, curricular design work that's been underway and it's going to continue, needs assessment on a full scale, curricular assessments themselves, AKA tests, we're going to focus on, data-driven as usual, but we're really looking carefully at what data counts, and professional development. So I just wanted to pause for a second to point out that under the circumstances that we're in, with so much going on and so much pressure from so many levels, visioning seems like the last thing that anybody wants to spend time doing. But it's just the institutions that do spend time with visioning work that are the ones that are driving the future change. So Chuck's work with Portrait of a Graduate is going to be really helpful in steering some of the conversations that we have. The local professional development committee is a team made up of district administrators and teacher leaders from all three of the building levels. We meet pretty frequently throughout the course of the year, and a lot of our work that we focus on is future-oriented visioning work, and that's a really powerful thing to do as an institution. The curricular design work is broken into hybrid learning, gifted and talented, math, social studies, culturally responsive work, and project-based learning. So I'm going to go through each one of those hopefully quickly. Hybrid learning, we started this process, obviously we were thrust into this, so we kind of had to do this, but we're taking this as a real opportunity for growth. This past summer, teachers spent 600 hours working on hybrid lesson design over the summer. So they've been working to try to transform their practices that will fit better into a hybrid learning environment. We're continuing that work. We're integrating a lot of the tools that are helping to make teachers' lives easier, and it's helping teachers to focus more on the actual interaction and the assessment process, because assessment is everything to education. Collegial collaboration is something that we're focusing on as well. Back to school professional development, for instance, about a third of that time at least was spent with teachers working with each other in either grade level or department teams to try to help each other, again, build in those efficiencies and kind of focus on their lessons, focus on their communication to try to make things more consistent across the board. And of course, it's forced a conversation about relevance, because when every single minute is, we're cutting our time that we have, that teachers have face-to-face with students. So it's forcing us to think about, what is the absolute best use of our face-to-face time with our students? So it's been a great conversation starter. Gifted and talented, I want to remind you that, this program is still very new. So we're still really focused on trying to improve it. Over the summer, 3 teachers in the middle school created curriculum for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. That curriculum has been going through review with, you might remember Ellen Brockman is our expert in this area. She's reviewed the curriculum and she's given us some really strong feedback that we're going to take our time and collect more data from parents and students and the administrator and teacher expertise to try to make some changes for that curriculum ongoing. Math, we started a math committee last year and we decided to use the inquiry research model to look at our math program so that we can try to design based on needs assessments that the teachers are doing with their teams to try to figure out what needs to be improved about our math program. And the teacher leaders, these teacher leaders are designing lessons with the help of each other and us as a committee. They're implementing those lessons with their teams, and then they're collecting data on those implementations, bringing that data back to the group to use a protocol that was brought in by our specialist, Rachel Erickson, who's been helping us really form the way the math program change is working. So we're examining the process and we're pinpointing assessment data carefully because we know that I really liked the way Rachel Harrison Brown, I should say. She pointed out that if you look at a teacher's assessment, you can tell a lot about what that teacher values, what that teacher thinks about the student as a learner. And so we're really thinking about, what is our assessment telling us about Haddonfield students? So we're looking closely at assessments. So the needs assessment, we're reaching out to student leaders. The National Honor Society, Holly Penna and Bill Usher are helping facilitate a conversation between us and the National Honor Society to try to build that portrait of the Haddonfield graduate. Ideally, I'm hoping they'll be able, if they're amenable, I'm hoping, the end product will be a documentary at the end of the year that really, depicts what that Haddonfield graduate will look like. We're doing community outreach. The social studies and the math committees are already leaning on, well, the math committee is leaning on, experts in the community, and the social studies committee is just starting up, so we're gonna be doing that very soon. The focus groups last spring we felt were incredibly valuable. They helped form the model that we're working under, and so we would like to do that again this year at some point. We're just not sure when. So curricular assessments, I did want to just point out that the focus on those assessments, we're going to be thinking about project-based learning. Project-based learning is beautiful because the project is the assessment. It's not something separate, discrete, outside of the learning. It is the learning. We're focusing on professional development. We have administrators taking part in a professional learning network of administrators around the county, and we have coaching happening. We're also focusing on the concept of criterion referenced assessments, and that's using authentic measures. So for instance, would it be the worst thing in the world for a kid to take home a test that's open source? When Mr. Klaus gave us this assignment, he didn't say you can't use any outside resources. He's in fact counting on us to go use outside resources. So we'd love to expand our understanding of what it means to do an assessment. So project-based and open source is exciting for us. And so we're thinking about what counts as data. We're all comfortable with the Linkit benchmarks by now. They're standards-based, it's data we can count on, but we're looking at some of the other forms of data that we can count on. So those formative assessments that we talked about briefly, the exit tickets, the assessments that the math committee and eventually the social studies committee will design, those formative assessments are much more natural and integrated, and it's more seamless, it's less clunky, if you will, for a teacher who's continuing to rely on formative assessments rather than that, end of the month test we're gonna take and it's gonna measure everything that we've been doing. The data we're gonna try to measure relevance and engagement, student voice and choice, learner responsibility, and of course it always has to be standards-based. So when we think about the standards, sometimes they get a bad rap. People think it's, whatever, it's pigeonholing, but I thought this is a great opportunity just to look at one example, because I think if you really look at the standards, they're quite elegant. This is a core idea from the computer science and design thinking standards. Engineering design is a complex process in which creativity, content knowledge, research, and analysis are used to address local and global problems. So this is a standard that marries that. Use research and design to create a product or system that addresses a problem and make modifications based on input from potential consumers. So wouldn't that be great if our students were designing a product, creating it, and then taking it out into the community, getting tested from, getting input from potential customers to revise it. It's much more natural and authentic. So that leads me to a little bit more about project-based learning, the plan. The administrative team had professional development over the summer to learn about, they all knew, our administrators are pretty strong with project-based learning, but we all appreciated a fundamentals review over the summer, especially when looking through the Haddonfield lens, how's that gonna look here? The LPDC, that leadership team of teachers and administrators, they'll be getting an introduction. Some teachers know it pretty well. A lot of teachers don't, and even the ones that know it well are really eager for that review. And then those teacher leaders are going to take it out into their grade levels or departments. And this is, we pushed this timeline back. It was supposed to be about now, they were starting this, but we're right around January or after. They're gonna work with their grade levels, or departments, and they're gonna create one project-based unit. And then come September, they'll actually implement that unit, and they'll collect data from it and study the data. And then come next November, professional development days, we'll have an expo, where the teachers can show off, the work that they've accomplished. So it's pretty exciting. The professional development focus for the year is project-based learning, social emotional learning through Yale Ruler. The project-based learning is through Rutgers, and the cultural responsiveness is through Rowan, as was already, talked about. So we're hoping, to make this, truly a learning-focused institution as it is. So that's it. That's all I have. That's all I have.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for either Dr. Priolo, Henderson, or Murray? Okay, I have two questions. So one question is from the, and I don't know if I'm directing it to you or to you, portrait of a graduate. Could you kind of go a little bit more kind of like what you're looking for? And the only reason I asked is professionally, I'm in charge of instructional design at a university, and we do this exercise all the time. And this was a year we actually shifted the dates. So we're looking at the portrait of a graduate in 4 distinct timeframes: 2021, 2024, 2027, and 2033, to really understand what that student will look like when they come to us. So is that really an exercise? Is that the idea of that exercise?
Yeah, so it'll serve many purposes. So it will be a lengthy process. It's not unlike strategic planning. We will have students, parents, board members, teachers, alumni come together and define what we believe the vision of a Haddonfield graduate is. The purpose of that is manyfold. One is it's good for the kids to see as a goal where they want, what expectations are. It also gives a common voice. So we'll know from K to 12, this is what the expectations our students will be able to, when they leave here, will be able to do. It helps decision-making. Why would we look at project-based learning? Because that fits in with what we want graduates to be able to do. So it gives kind of a North Star for decision-making, what we're looking to accomplish for our students. When we sit down and say portrait of a graduate, no one's going to say someone who can solve a quadratic equation, right? That's not what's going to come out of this, right? We're going to say, what do we really value as a community? What are the things we want our students, children, alumni to be able to do? What should they be able to accomplish when they leave us, when they turn 18 and go out into the rest of the world? So it is kind of a lengthy process, because what we'll do is we'll bring teams together. We'll have action teams break out, and then we'll compare and come to consensus. We'll put it out to the community as a whole and get feedback from the community, and then bring that back, modify once again. And I would think, I was talking actually, Judy Wilson and I were talking about this today. Probably come for board approval like we're going to start it next month. Probably come for board approval like next August. Like, we really want to do a deep dive into this, because if it's going to be how we define where we want to go by what our children should look like when they leave, we've got to make sure it really is what we want our children to look like when they leave. So that's the goal of this. So we know where we want to go. It gives a common language for what we want. It helps decision making, and it also is so valuable for kids to understand this is our expectation.
Thank you. The other question really is kind of going to the non-Western culture comment that Dr. Henderson made. And I like to freak people out, but it's the truth. In January starts the 3rd decade of the 21st century. And we talk about the global century, the rise of non-Western cultures as being dominant players in the field. Is that kind of like the goal of the non-Western awareness part of of that program?
Well, part of it is to try to make a shift to bring us away from those colonized practices. And that's inclusive of what we have in our curriculum, you know, in our history. And so we want to ensure that if we are truly being culturally responsive, we do have to amend some of those Western perspectives because they're not all truthful and they're not all inclusive of like what we all have to contribute to this. So that's really what that's about. It's more so to just look at it in a global perspective, ensuring that we embody the cultures of various people. So,
For more than just awareness, but actually empathy or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
we need to go beyond awareness, and we do have to get to a point of acknowledgement as well.
Thank you.
I had a question that, I partially know the answer to, but I wanted to just have the discussion about, and it piggybacks on both the, cultural responsiveness and the social studies, committee. And are we rethinking and reevaluating textbooks and the use of textbooks and maybe leaning more towards, I know we use a lot of primary sources already, and I know there's some collections of primary source documents, but maybe a very deliberate awareness of the distortion that we get from the textbooks. Is that included in both of these committees? Is that a part of the discussion?
It is absolutely. I'll let Dr. Henderson talk as well, but, you know, what Susan Kuttner pointed out a couple of meetings ago that, you know, most of our primary sources, you know, they date back to 1990 or before. And that took me aback, you know, and I did a little bit of research and she's not wrong. You know, we don't have enough, you know, primary contemporary resources. And that's the stuff that gets the kids going is, you know, what's happening in the world today. But it's also, you know, in fairness, it's also, you know, when the teachers bring up certain subjects, it brings outside scrutiny. So it's a hard, it's a tense, you know, type of thing. And that's to what Dr. Henderson was talking about, is that uncomfortable tension that we have to be willing to lean into. So if you wanted to add.
Yeah, so one of the things that is in my plan is to spend about 34 hours doing curriculum work, using the peers facilitator and our staff and our students to score our current curriculum, to see if the practices within the curriculum are culturally responsive. So peer uses a scorecard. It's a cultural responsive scorecard that is designed for curriculum. So I think that going in that direction and having the input of the various stakeholders partaking in scoring the curriculum and then having a discussion on the direction that we need to go in would be beneficial to the entire initiative.
Yeah, and I think on that is actually one of the things that I teach college writing, and one of the things that we really or I try to focus on is the critical thinking. And I think the cultural responsiveness that is one of the things we miss in not realizing it is not as educators, I think people understand, but that introducing the cultural responsive curriculum is not only building empathy towards others, but it is increasing the ability to think critically when given information that isn't introduced to you by a teacher. And I think that there's tremendous value in that because it just enables students to understand when we talk about a future graduate, that idea of holding two very contrary ideas in your head, which means teachers feel able to when they learn something they're not familiar with, but that there's value in that because it does increase their ability to be critical thinkers in the future, and that there is really a critical period for that. So I think it's great that we're doing that. I just want to make sure that teachers feel supported in that as well.
Which is the purpose of the all the staff development. That's an important factor in this, cultural responsible goal. We have to have the staff development, and it needs to be ongoing, because we have to generate those feelings of tension, in order to have the conversation. You know, I think often enough, people are silent and not always comfortable to say, how they feel about a culture or race, or identity. And, we can't continue to be silent on the topic. In order for us to move forward, we have to have the discussion. So that was the first thing, ourselves, the reflection on ourselves, and getting up and understanding our own biases and how our biases impact on how we interact with others.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a real challenging one. I was thinking about that too. I mean, because we talked about, having the equity council, the leadership team, saw the outcomes that you want to achieve. Question is, well, how do you get there? And it's a very easy issue to spin your wheels on. And some people say, well, are we just going to be talking? I want to see actual results. And I think there's a benefit to talking, but I also think there's a benefit to, achieving, real results. And it's the type of issue where you're going to rub somebody the wrong way. So I think we need to say, if this really is one of our key goals, we need to be very clear in what the action steps are to get there, including around the curriculum, as Jamie was saying. A very challenging one, but wish you luck. Yeah. Hey, question for you, Colleen, maybe Chuck, related to, I know we said we wanted to, really wanted to push project-based learning. At the same time, we also want to be data-driven. Are those two in tension with each other at all? Or are you still able to get the data that you want? And is that data that you're going to get, is that going to suffer at all?
That's a
moving to
really
project-based.
hard question, Justin, but I think it's an awesome one, and it's funny because it came up this week. They're only in tension with each other insofar as most people are not used to using qualitative data. And so, like, one of the teacher teams this week, we had the delayed opening, and they were talking about this subject. They said, we have all this qualitative data, and we can't really quantify it, but you can in fact quantify qualitative data, and that's what coding is all about. And so it's a matter of, like what Dr. Henderson just said, it's a lot more learning intensive, because it's not easy. It's very different. It's not the same as that multiple choice test that gives you, binary, selection. So it'll be hard, but it'll be worthy for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know that it's somewhat controversial and people have different opinions. But I think we look at education one way, and then we're trying to set our graduates up to go out and be in the real world. And in the real world, it is not what are all the facts you know, it is can you get the answers that you need? And you have to, we teach them, you have to know all the facts and then put them out in the world into a very different environment. So I think that there's real value in understanding that this is not 50 or 70 years ago where you had to have all the facts in your head, because that was the world. It is, can you go out and build upon the facts that are already there that you can get to, and then reach greater heights because you can figure things out on top of the facts you can get to. So I'm very much behind pushing forward.
Thank you so much. If I could be a little nerdy for a second, Vygotsky would say that that's the zone of proximal development, where you can't measure someone's intelligence by what they know at a given time, but you can measure it by what they can do with someone's help. So I loved what you just said right now, and I just wanted to share that.
What was that name you dropped?
Yeah.
Vygotsky.
It sounds like
What's it called, the
acceleration
zone of
versus
what?
velocity.
A proximal development.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. If there's no more questions, then I'll offer just time for the online folks. If anybody wants to chime in, now's your chance, or we'll move on. All right, seeing none, we'll move to board member comments and committee reports. For curriculum, I asked Ms. Grickett to give the update.
Sure, we had a good curriculum committee meeting. We talked about, getting the digital license for, Lucy Calkins. The, virtual instructional support will be available for students in grades 1 and 2, for math and science, as in the past. It'll take place after the school day. And it will be done virtual. Middle school gifted and talented program. We talked some of this in Dr. Murray's presentation already. Consulted with Ellen Brofman again and got some parent input. One of the things we discussed was having more of a hard math and science and ELA approach, and grounded more in the academics and communicate the objectives more directly to the students so that they understand the purpose of what they're doing. We talked about the high school AP English language and composition text that contains more diverse writings, including LGBTQ, people of color, Native Americans, and also coinciding with New Jersey curriculum standards. Talked about the back to school professional development survey. That feedback was constructive and will inform future professional developments. Had an update on the dating violence curriculum, and we discussed how that would contain a trigger warning for any students that felt as though they couldn't attend or need to speak to a counselor. Talked about the social studies curriculum, which I think we've already covered. And the delayed opening that we had delayed opening yesterday. It gave teachers an opportunity to analyze the linked data that the students took the week before.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, finance facilities, Ms. Cutner?
Nothing new. We haven't met since the last meeting.
All right, thank you. Policy?
Nothing new on that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question real quick with facilities? Thanks. Hey, Susan, what's, do we have a deadline? And maybe we don't, and that's what I'm looking for our long-range facilities plan. Like, what's the next step and what's the?
We're just coming out, our plan is good for 5 years. I think we're just within the 5 years right now. If we have another project application to submit, like say we have a capital maintenance thing come up, we would minimally have to update it at that point. So in terms though of the big educational decisions that we have, like for example, what to do with Cooley Hall, there's really no time limit on that. It's really our schedule.
Perfect. I guess the only other comment, it's just that I know we said we were gonna discuss Bancroft in detail sometime soon. Are we putting that on
It's
the
on October
October?
meetings, yes.
Cool, thanks.
Communications?
Nothing for us.
All right. Mr. Vecchio, you're up.
Thank you, Dave. I am very excited to announce that this week we reached an agreement in principle with the Haddonfield Education Association for an extension of the current contract. It'll be finalized. There's some work to be done, but it'll be finalized soon. Once it is finalized, it will be retroactive to July 1st. Very happy to be able to report this so early in the year, and not stretched out. It's a good day for the community. It's a good day for the teachers. It's a good day for the students. I want to thank Rachel, Sean, and the entire HEA negotiation committee for their hard work. I'm going to thank my fellow members of the negotiation committee. We've got some work to do starting in December, January, but for today, we will be happy with reaching an agreement. So thank you to everybody involved.
Thanks for that update. Tom? Dr. Priolo?
No new information other than.
Other than the presentation, that was well received. Thank you. Mr. Klaus?
Okay, how are you doing? I'm going to go through, take some time now to talk about it. We had obviously our first positive case of COVID in the school district. So I'm going to take some time and talk through all the different avenues, all the different areas this hits, to try to clarify for everyone what the process looks like from the Department of Health, from the borough, from the school, from the families, so we all understand a little better the communication of all these pieces. Because it is very complicated and it is very almost, convoluted is the wrong word, but it kind of feels that way, quite frankly, in a lot of things. Especially since we're talking about anxiety and we're talking about nervousness. People hear this and they want answers, and we're also trying to protect identity. So we have this balance of how do we inform as much as we can and still protect identities. And if you think about it, if we're talking about, I'll go through my list here, and then when I get to certain areas, I'll really emphasize things. So here's the overall design of notification process. A testing center will get a positive COVID result. They will inform the doctor and the Camden County Department of Health. They do both of those because the doctor's got to tell the family before the county calls them, because the county's going to call them almost immediately once they have the results. Now, apparently, I had a lot of discussions with the county this week because of what seemed to be a delay in us finding out information. And sometimes it takes as much as 24 hours for the positive result from the testing center to upload into their database. At that time, the family calls the doctor. The doctor calls the family and says, we're going to hear from the county. The Camden County Department of Health contacts the family and asks questions to initiate contact tracing. That's generally a 24-hour process. They're saying it can happen quicker, but there's a lot of factors in that. Once that happens, the Camden County Department of Health will contact the district and ask us for information. They're going to ask us for anyone who may have been in close contact with them, names, addresses, telephone numbers, and we supply all of that information to them. They'll ask questions about room setups. They'll ask questions about everything you could imagine. When we got our first contact on Tuesday, I didn't look at it. It was probably an hour and a half on the phone with the contact tracer, just finding out what information they wanted, how they wanted it, and that thing to gather it and get it over to them. So that's quite a process. At that time, the school, that time the Camden County will talk about the contact tracing. They'll advise the school district if individuals need to be quarantined or any actions to be taken there. That's the simple, how do we as a school district learn about it, right? That's that process. Now, this should be noted that if a parent or a family has a positive case and they tell the school district, we know what information the county needs. We can gather that and get that to the county as they're getting the results and save time, right? So that 24 hours it takes the county to get information can be cut short if we know. We can pull class lists, we can pull teachers' contact, we can pull those things, and when the county has the positive confirmation, we just give it to them right then and there. So that can be a time saver in that factor. It should also be known that there's been a lot of false positives. So the test results, not a phone call from a parent saying, I have a positive test, does not initiate anything until the county confirms that it is a positive test. So that's one of the issues that goes back and forth a lot with rumors in the community, right? So what tests count, what's your positive? The biggest frustration I think we all see is that, I know exactly what time it was like 12:47 on Sunday, the borough posts that there's all these positive cases in town, and 4 of those positive cases look like they would be students in our school. We don't find out until later Tuesday about the case. The thing to remember is that the information the borough is getting is very simple. It's the sex and it's the age cluster. As a matter of fact, if you go on the county Department of Health page, every day they're posting, like by the hour, that information comes up and the borough's getting that quickly. There is no information to the borough about who the person is, where they go to school, all of those pieces. That's that step to count. That's the delay between us getting it and the borough getting it, because they have to have more information from the family. They interview the family to find out potential contacts, not just at school, Are they on a baseball team? Did they go to their aunt's house? All those factors come into play. So that interview process with the Department of Health and the family is extensive. So there is a delay in that. And the county tries to work on a 24-hour turnover on that. You know, that's their goal time. They didn't make it with us, but that's another story. Then the school, they said the county notifies us and we start doing that information sharing. Now, district communication to the community. This is where the angst of, I want to know if it was my kid's class. I want to know if it was my kid involved. We have a responsibility to protect children's identity in this piece, in this case. If you think about standardized testing, right? If you have, when we give our reports at the end of the year, some testing groups, we don't report data out on because the N number is so small, you would be able to identify that kid's test score. If you're talking about an elementary cohort, there's 12 kids in that cohort. When you identify that classroom, you are in essence identifying that child, basically. I mean, not specifically, but you're narrowing it down that much. So the whole balance you walk in this is, how do I get at the information without identifying the child? A parallel thing we do, 10 years ago, when a child in school had lice, we would send an email out or note to the family. Everyone in Mr. Klaus's class, just so you know, one of the students had lice, and everyone who had lice the next day. This would not be, and now we don't do that. We put out a general notice. Make sure you check your kids and wash their hair. This is that exact parallel piece, so we have to walk that. Now, the difference here, obviously, is that lice is one thing and this is something different. You know, in some ways, lice is difficult because it's embarrassing, but you could be the person they think shut our school down. So there's a lot more to it. Also, if I get lice off of you, it's more curable and easier to fix it. So the weight of it is obviously significantly different. Our particular case that we had this week, when we met with the county and talked to them, and then we talked to them again on Wednesday, the positive testing, because the child was asymptomatic, the positive testing and the look back period, the child had not been in the school district. He had not been to school. So there was no notification from the district because there was nothing to notify because there was no contact tracing happening within the school. I don't know if they contact traced it outside of school, because what happens is we are responsible for notifying in the school environment. The county does everything else. So if they went to their aunt's house, they have to talk to the aunt, not teach. So since the look back period, the child was not in the school building, no notifications went out. What may happen, what will happen? Okay, so we're going to be very honest with this. What will happen is eventually we're going to have a positive test in school. The student or the teacher would have been in school, and there would have been potential close contact, which we get to close contact, closer than 6 feet without a mask for 10 minutes, right? So that's potential close contact. When that happens, anyone who's in that category, they will receive a letter. So if right now, hypothetical, I were to test positive tomorrow, you would all get a letter saying you were in close contact with someone who's tested positive. And this is where that balance of protecting that individual privacy and the common good of the well-being of the community comes in balance.
But you're wearing a mask right now.
So this is where it gets really tricky, Justin. Is that if I took it down, the kid could drink, right?
Okay.
So what we have to decide with the help of the county is, what are the chances that during any period of time, I have my mask off? So when that next step happens, we'll be interviewing the teacher, we'll be talking to the kid, we'll do all of those things to make sure that happens. What may happen in this situation, they may say, Heather gets a letter, but Mike doesn't because he's way down there. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be guided by logic, by thinking about it, by working with the Department of Health to say, what's a realistic expectation of close contact? And in that case, people will be notified. People will be quarantined, and I'm going to say it, classes will be quarantined probably, right? There's going to be a time maybe when we get 3 or 4 cases. We have been very lucky that we've only had 1. There are school districts near us that have had many, many more. But that's overall, in essence, the process that this goes through. Other things we're working on now, extracurriculars have thrown us a curveball, no pun intended. In that with kids in cohorts not being in school, feeling that screening folks, we've really tightened that up. As a matter of fact, Mr. Banos now, after school, goes from practice to practice to make sure protocols are being followed. Making sure when you're not on the field, you have your mask off the field. This, if you've talked to me, this is a disease of behavior. I stole that off with Joanne Connor, if she happened to be listening. It's a disease of behavior as much as anything else, right? If we do what's right, we're pretty safe. If you look out front after the kids leave school, they cluster, right? If you watch kids in football, football players, anyway, they've been sharing water bottles their whole lives. That tendency has to stop, right? So they're the things we're looking at with that. So extracurriculars are some place we're really looking at to making sure they're following all the rules, both during competition and after competition. And I want to follow this by saying, I believe with every fiber of my being, our schools might be the safest place in the community right now. If you walk through a school building during a school day at 50% capacity with people in masks, with the windows open, it's really pretty safe. It's safer than walking down Kings Highway, I would think, right? It's because you walk down Kings Highway, some people have masks on. It's safer than a lot of areas. I know we had a positive test. The positive test was not contracted in school. We know that because of the contact rates. And I cannot emphasize, I believe that our schools are very safe because of the precautions we have in place. But we need to be vigilant. We need to be, as a community, we have our pledges, we need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves and taking care of others. We can't come to school when we're sick. We've got to look at those screening forms. We've got to take them seriously. We've got to wear our masks and do those things. And if you walk through schools, they are. I said it last week. I'll say it again. Gino went through every classroom in high school, middle school, and elementary school. Every single kid had their mask on. You couldn't find one without it. So we're doing a really good job there in the buildings. So that was our experience with the COVID piece. That was our positive thing in our communication sheet. Any question about that? Go ahead.
First of all, thank you for that background. It's fantastic to understand it. I have two questions for you. So the borough sent out a tweet on Sunday, and I forget the exact number. I believe it might have been 5 individuals under the age of 20, one in their 20s and the other 4 perhaps under 20. Because you only notified the district about one positive case, does then everybody assume that the other 4 cases
Correct.
Are not Haddonfield students?
Correct, they're
Because
not.
the first communication you did a couple weeks ago was that they're not. So you're not going to reach out if it's not a Haddonfield student.
I'm not going to
We're
reach
not
out.
gonna hear about it. Okay.
Correct, yes. And they are, and I actually I actually have the doctor from the county's cell phone and home phone now in my thing because we've been talking. They were all, while they're still in their 10s, they were all older than high school students. So you can figure out there where they would fall age-wise. So the 7 females in their 10s, since September 12th, we've had 7 females in their 10s test positive. All of them were
Older than
high school.
So then my second question, just to understand, so the district tweets this out on Sunday, and you said earlier that the county Department of Health did not contact you until Tuesday. I realize you can't answer for them, but when you were talking with them, if they were able to notify the borough on Sunday, like why did they call you on Monday? Or do you know? Did they explain?
This goes into them talking to the family to find out where the child went to school.
Got it.
And that process. So
Okay.
that's the delay there. The borough gets one line,
Got it.
male, juvenile, under 10, and they post that. By the time we talked to the county, they knew everywhere the child was for the last 10 days or something to that effect. So that's part of the delay. That being said, it should have been Monday, not Tuesday.
Yeah.
And that's the point we had with them, that 48 hours is
Too
long.
So can I just add something for how we as a district are organizing our responsiveness, flexibility, being agile to these situations. Something I want to bring to everyone's attention. One, each school has what's called a pandemic response team. And the charge of those pandemic response teams are to meet on a regular basis, to review how we responded to a situation, how our protocols are being implemented at each school, and whether any changes need to be made. Another layer that is not required by the state, but that we have instituted, is a district-wide pandemic response team. Every Monday morning, Chuck and I meet with our medical team, which includes our nurses and the district physician, which are all on those school-based pandemic response teams, to filter through what is happening at the schools, and also reviewing district-wide things to determine whether or not any changes have to be made. I'll give you an example. We met Monday morning, prior to us knowing that there was a positive case, and one of the things was we want to try to improve the efficiency with which we send out communications and the manner with which we do that. Understanding that parents are inundated with email messages now, we created a new email account, which you have seen, HSD Health. Ironically, we created that 24 hours before the first notice of a positive COVID case came out. But that was something that came out of our district-wide pandemic response team recommendation, was implemented within 24 hours, and was in a timely manner that we were able to get that out. So almost all of our health information is going to be under that email heading of HSD Health.
Is that also an intake box? Because of all the things that Chuck said, here's what I heard. Don't wait for the county to tell us. And there's a judgment-freeness to how they intake. So when I heard Chuck just describe this policy, or this flow of events, I went to the HIB statute, the HIB thing that we all swear to. And that's, if you tell me your kid's being bullied, I have 24 hours to tell somebody. In that same vein, if anybody in the community knows, so I'm asking the question, what is their avenue to let the district know? They hang up with the county, what do?
Call the school nurse.
Call the school
Call the
nurse.
school nurse. That's the best way to go about this. The school nurses also have direct connections to the county Department of Health. So call the school nurse is the best way to notify.
And that's what we're trying to encourage people to do.
Yes.
Your first call's to the county, your second call's to us.
Well, you didn't have to call the county. The testing center calls the county.
Oh, okay.
When the doctor calls you, call us. Gina, did you have a question?
No, I
Oh,
didn't.
I'm
How
sorry.
long is
Oh.
the look back period?
It's 2 days from symptoms or 2 days from positive testing. All right, so my next thing is, Mike, if you don't want to take a second to talk about, we got notification just yesterday of a coronavirus fund, relief fund.
Right, so actually back in June, the state released, if you remember, the CARES Act Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. That was the first grant we got back in June. This one is called the Coronavirus Relief Fund grant application. So these are funds we were allocated around $73,000. These are funds that can actually be accounted for from March of this year through December of this year. So we're going to look to allocate that and use those funds for all the same 11 bullet points from the first CARES Act money we received. So that goes from your cleaning supplies all the way through technology supplies to help with opening school.
Thanks, Mike.
So did we say how much it is, or do we know how much it is? 73,000. Sorry, I missed that.
The next thing I'm going to speak to briefly is graduation pathways. So we have to report out every year, we report to the state and report to the board and report out to the community our graduation pathways. And this is for the class of 2019. What graduation pathways are is when Park came in, and there was a requirement to pass the park to graduate high school. There was a lot of concern over whether that specific test was going to keep people from graduating high school. I passed all my classes. I did all of this. The test stopped me from graduating. So they created what's called the pathways. And the graduation pathways, it develops, it tracks what standardized tests you use to meet graduation. So to graduate high school in New Jersey, you've got to pass a standardized test, one in math and one in ELA. And the purpose of this pathway is to see what tests are used. So if you can use, I've got a list of the tests that you can use. You can do the NJSA 9-10, the 3 maths, or you can substitute the PSAT or SAT in. So if you pass the ELA, NJSLA ELA test, and you do well on the SAT, you use the the state test as the primary source. So just the quick numbers, you look at it here. Class of 19, we had 204 students. 161 used the NJSLA as their pathway measure. 40 used PSAT or SAT, and 3 students met the requirements through their IEP. So that just shows you how we're using our testing to graduate. That's simple, straightforward, and that was something we need to share with the board. So that's that. And now, unsung heroes. This has become a regular session here, I guess. Our latest group of unsung heroes is our nurses and Dr. Natiki. So we heard about them earlier. The amount of work, time, and effort, their knowledge, their passion, their caring, the administration has been leaning on these people, these 4 people. Beth Herrera, Michelle Barringer, Dana Reganata, and Regina Mango have been leaning on them for knowledge about PPEs, about knowledge about body temperatures, and they've done nothing but with absolute professionalism and positive attitude have gotten us through this. The schools would not be open without them. I mean, they wouldn't be open without it, but absolutely, I would say they have maybe the most significant role in a lot of ways of making sure that our kids are safe. They've done a great job, and we'll be social media congratulating them again tomorrow, like we've been doing after these board meetings with our unsung heroes. Wonderful people to work with. And not there's Dr. Natiki too, who we talked about earlier, but so knowledgeable and so passionate about what they do, and really have been a great help to us. So that's my superintendent's report.
I want to give them a round of applause.
Yeah, round of applause.
So I'm not giving a board president's report. I'm just taking a few minutes. So bear with me. So 2 topics I want to talk about. The first one is what just happened for the last 40 minutes was a decision gets made. We just don't hear the decision. We hear the rationale. We hear the thought behind it. We hear possible choices that they could have taken, but they didn't. We hear about next steps. One thing I want to say is we take it for granted. I had the opportunity secondhand to hear an anecdote just tonight on my way over here. And it was from a teacher in another district who's moved into town and was absolutely floored by the level of communication that this district does. And it was not only that the communication was timely, but it covered more than just the decision, right? There was rationale. The latest one, the one that was called out, was the attendance policy for the high school. Well, actually 2 were called out, but the one I want to point out is the attendance policy for football. That could be a contentious issue. If I plugged into social media anymore, I'm sure it's already being discussed. But understand the luxury that you have, that you already know what the district's plan is for how tickets are going to be allocated, the rationale about how they're allocated and why they're allocated, that there is a visiting team and that they get some. Please, never for a moment take for granted that this person shared that at their school, their high school, they have no idea what the plan is. And they have a game this weekend, or they were supposed to have a game this weekend, but the other team had a positive case and they had to actually postpone the game. So our first game, I think, is October 2nd.
Correct.
And like it, agree with the policy, don't. Two things were given: the rationale behind it and the fact that you already know the plan and there isn't a game for a few weeks. So I just wanted to make that as a statement because it's very easy to take for granted the level of communication that this district generates. The other one is, I'm not going to put it in an unsung hero category, but I'm going to describe it like this. So Mr. Catalano in the past has described at the board's asking the graphic, where does a dollar go in the Haddonfield School District? So you'll see, 21 cents go to special education, 34 cents go to general education, and then you start getting down like a penny for transportation, 3 cents for technology, some 7 cents for probably like carrying costs, those types of things. Imagine now, out of the blue, 37 houses popped up in the borough, and every dime of their tax money went to one issue, and that issue was security. Wouldn't that be awesome? But that's exactly what just happened. So I know we talked about this at the last meeting. It was one of those take for granted moments, like I just talked about with the communication. And there's no way we should take this one for granted. When I ran for the board in 2013, a big topic was security. In 2014, a big topic was security. In 2015, a big topic was security. We finally got around to start really putting some effort into it. Change of administration, adults in the building, listening to the public, saying, we need to feel safer. And we finally got over the hump of macho, right? Like, oh, we don't need safe, or we're a little borough, really doesn't matter. And we started to take things seriously. And there was a priority of projects that we could do, projects that we could do now, little things like renumbering the high school to 3 different buildings. So the fire department knows which building, which section to go to, the A wing, the B wing, or the C wing. And some things we said, we don't have the money for. And those things were kind of important, like an alert system. So just like you could pull a fire alarm, you could pull an alarm that does things like locks every door, sounds an alarm. Things like, you don't build buildings, and Susan has said this many times, you don't build buildings like this anymore where windows are at this height, at this size, on the first floor. Pretty easy to shoot out. Wouldn't it be great if we had ballistic glass, or at least ballistic coverings? And then the last thing is, what is the last thing?
Cameras.
Cameras, right. So cameras, we covered the outside, and really in the Haddonfield fashion, it's some kids just fooling around, or, they're drinking and we just want to know how they are. These are cameras for everywhere. The exits of bathrooms for vandalism, really unused hallways that we really could use an extra set of eyes on. We heard these needs. We got a whole list from a wonderful community committee, but we felt like we don't have to wait for a referendum. These things are big ticket items. So I really want to call out Ms. Horwitz. So Sandy Horwitz, if you're on, could you please unmute your camera? She's pretty humble. There she goes. When I said 37 houses worth of taxes, she was able to, with blood, sweat, and perseverance, apply for and win a grant for $500,000. That is money this tax base doesn't have to generate. It's money we don't have to wait for a vote of the public to grant us the ability to raise those funds. And more importantly, it gets the projects done at a much faster time frame than we could have possibly hoped for. So I personally want to thank you, Sandy. I think The whole board does too, and the community sure as hell should. Because what you did for us is going to protect all of our students for a very long time to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Sandy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move to a public comment. So, John, if we could flip the screen and open up the phone lines. We're gonna vamp a little bit because it takes a little bit of time to open the queue. But in deference to the announcement that Mr. Vecchio made in his report on negotiations, I would ask if in the dial-in, if Rachel or Sean are dialing in, one, you're first, and two, just open up your line and start talking. I won't take anyone until I hear silence. Oh, I have to actually call in so I can see the list. So, it's in our calendar, yeah. Yeah, no, I'll make sure I mute. Uh-huh.
You got your first one.
Okay, can you hear me? Dave?
Yes, I just wanted to mute before I spoke, or you would have heard a big squelch. So please. Go ahead.
David, it's Rachel. Did you want me to go?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry. You're putting me on the spot. I told Tom he could make the announcement and leave it at that. But so we're really appreciative on the HEA part for the board and their members keeping communication with us open and being willing to work on resolving this contract, you know, at the start of this year.
No, thank you, Rachel. And thank you and the committee for putting.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing myself.
Oh, yeah, that's you.
Thanks.
No, so I wanted to just thank you, Sean, your committee for, for perseverance with the board and thank you.
Yeah, our appreciation is on our end as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was 60943. All right, so I see two other callers on the line. I'll go in order. So 85651, you can star 6 to open up your mic and address the board. 8565 ending in 51. All right, 856 ending in 67. If you'd like to star 6 on your phone to open your mic, we're all ears.
Hello, this is
51.
This is 51. Sorry.
1. Please say your name and.
Hi, this is Lindsay Watson McCarthy.
Lindsay, can I ask you to star 6 to mute the 51 join first? Sorry.
Hi, this is Mike Gorman, Lansdowne Avenue.
Okay.
So I was hoping, I didn't hear it all addressed tonight. Mike Gorman, Lansdowne Avenue. Sorry, there's an echo. I'm not sure it's coming back through, but so I was hoping, I didn't hear it all addressed when the students will be going back full time. What's the next step? What are the metrics that the district is looking at to get the kids back in school full time? What are the benchmarks? I haven't heard anything addressed at all about how we get the kids from 2 half days, 4 hours a day to more in-school time. I've heard about more kids leaving the district this week to go to private schools because the district can't offer full-time schools yet. You know, schools all around us, private schools are offering full-time school. If you could please address that and also remind me again why Wednesdays are an off day. I'm confused by that. So if you guys could please address all of those questions, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike.
So we are looking at when we can possibly move to phase two. In our plan, phase two is to go to full days, 4 days a week, instead of the 2 half days. A lot of the metrics are based on not just local, but county and regional numbers. So the county puts out reports, actually the state puts out reports. And this is the first week in the last month, I think, where the Southwest is our region is low. We've been in the moderate region, which wouldn't mean we wouldn't move for that at all. And we're looking at numbers, not just, they won't give us, we can get Haddonfield specific numbers, but the Department of Health, and the discussion with them, warned that can be very deceptive. That the number of people just isn't enough, and something like having one pocket can really throw it off. A better example might be if they were to give Glassboro numbers, since Rowan's in Glassboro, those numbers would be all over the place, not based on the community, based on the college. So we don't use municipal numbers. Now they have the county numbers, but the ones we really look at are the regional numbers, which are part of it's called the COVID active level index, the CALI. And for the first time in a month, we are now in low. We've been in moderate the Southwest. So we're looking at those numbers. We are watching and talking about how we can make this jump to full. We talked about this last week, about some of the challenges of social distancing when we have to eat and do those pieces. So we're looking at that as well. And we're looking at different ways to try to increase. We know in-person instruction is best. I think if you've watched me through this process, almost to a fault, I've put that out there, how much I want to get back to this. And quite frankly, in the summer, if you remember, it was that attitude was out there for me, and I see that I was probably right in backing off. Dr. Fauci was on with Governor Murphy today, if you saw it, and his advice he said over and over again is, you've got to be prudent. If you want to be here in November, if you want to be here in January, you've got to take it with some caution and really be sure. We're seeing other schools are closing down because of these things. So we are looking at moving forward. And the pandemic teams in the buildings, that's something they're looking at, about the ways they can move toward opening up. So our goal is to open up. Phase 2 is just half day or full days. Phase 3 is full time. We're trying to get in a direction, but we are trying to be cautious and thoughtful about it. Wednesdays serve a purpose for individual and group instruction on the elementary levels, because there's no time to do that in the structure currently. It's also time for planning, because there's extra planning and work for teachers to do. In the middle and high school is a full virtual day, so they see all of their teachers. So that's why we have that. The other option we could, and this is something I actually was talking with someone about today, is to look to go to a 3-2. So 3-2 1 week and then 3-2 the other week. Cohort A would have 3 1 week and 2 next week and that. But right now we're seeing the value in that Wednesday, but we are examining everything constantly. No one wants to get back to it more than I do, and we do want to get better at it. So that's where we are with our decision-making process with that. I hope that answers the question.
You know, to add to that, if we don't have a lot of cases, as you just mentioned, you're looking at the 3-2 for Wednesday, we may move to that potentially. But initially, having that Wednesday off was great for deep dive cleaning and to kind of allow any virus in the air to weaken. So it was a good way to start. It may not necessarily be where we are down the road.
And what we found with Tim and his team, McFerrin, they've got, Mike, you might know the name of what they've got more devices, so they can actually do a real deep disinfect every day now. So we've gotten much more efficient at that. Electrostatic sprayers. So we have electrostatic sprayers hitting all the surfaces every day. We've got, I think, 4 more of them this week. Is that it? So we're doing more of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're likely getting the sense, from people in the community, like people want to say, like want to know now, like What is it going to take exactly? The numbers need to be under what level, by what date, and then we're gonna go back to either, we're gonna move from 2 days to 3 days, or we're gonna go from 2 days to 4 full days. And I think what I'm hearing is, we can't do that right at this moment. We're continuing to evaluate it, and it may become clear, we're now, 3 weeks in? And so with every day or week that passes, you might get close to putting that proposal out there.
Correct. I think this is really, we have a lot to talk about in October, right? And this will certainly be where we're trying to really target by our October board meetings, really have target dates saying, we know we can do this now. We understand where we have to get better at that. But what I don't want to do is take a step back. And I think that would be, that would obviously be bad, but I think that we're 3 weeks in, and I wish I could give a date. I wish I could say October 20th or whatever it would be. But we are taking it day by day, talking this and talking with other districts too, getting their ideas of how they're trying to come back and what their thoughts are. Because sometimes we have a struggle they don't have. So that's part of that.
Thanks, Chuck. 85667. I didn't remember your name, ma'am. Sorry. But you can unmute *6. And when you unmute, just your name again and your street. Thank you.
Because of delay, right?
Yeah, that's what he forgot the question. It takes her a couple seconds, Dave, before she hears you.
No, when they're on the phone, they hear right away. You unmuted and then you muted yourself again? We're not going anywhere. We know you want to speak.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
I don't think she can hear us now.
Yeah, that's right.
Is she listening?
Yeah, if you turn your YouTube volume down, you can hear the meeting through your phone. I think you're very. So one more try to unmute. If not, I'll come back to you. There's another phone that joined. Okay, so 97339. John, we can be heard, yes? Okay. So 97339, you're unmuted, please.
Hi, how are you? This is Stephanie.
Stephanie
on Clinton Avenue.
from Clinton Avenue.
And I just had a question about the positive COVID case. I wanted to say I really appreciate the careful and thoughtful work that you all are doing. I think you're really doing such a wonderful job of informing everyone and keeping everyone updated. I guess my concern was about how the contact tracers are identifying low risk encounters. And, I think I understand that a contact tracer, by nature of the amount of community prevalence of COVID, really needs to be focused on high risk encounters. And, because of lack of resources and personnel, they don't really have the time to be able to follow up on low risk exposures. I think my concern is that while a masked exposure of greater than 6 feet away from an individual with COVID is a low risk situation, I don't think we have any data to say that it's a zero risk situation. And I think there's a real paucity of data showing how well cloth masks may reduce COVID exposure in a school setting. That being said, I understand that there certainly is a balance between patient privacy and public health. But I guess I feel pretty strongly that knowledge is power for families in this situation, and there are likely a number of factors that influence an individual family's risk tolerance of COVID infection. That may be because they have an elderly or otherwise immunocompromised person who lives in the household. And knowing about a potential low risk, albeit probably not zero risk exposure in the classroom, I think would cause some families to make different decisions, including maybe refraining from interacting with elderly grandparents or other high-risk individuals, or maybe even having their children or themselves do COVID testing in light of mild symptoms. And I guess I feel like if we're really as a community going to keep the numbers of COVID down, it's going to be seeking out all these possible exposures. So I don't know. I guess I just wanted to get your input on that. I don't know if these decisions are strictly driven by the county and the district doesn't really have much of a say of how to address it, but I do think the job of a contact tracer is different than maybe what the responsibility of an overall district is in trying to maintain the health of a community.
Sure. So thank you for your call, and
Thank you for that feedback, and I agree with what you say. One of the discussions we were having earlier today is as we gave the example about being in the room, about if we do have a positive case and we have our parameters set up, if we can't be positive that everyone had their mask on all the time, we're going to assume that they did not. So we are leaning toward a more conservative way of doing it. We certainly are not going to say, well, you were only 5'11" away, so we're going to make it happen. We would, if we had any thought at all that there was the close contact, we would act as if that.
And is it also fair to say, although we own the decision, we don't own the data that we're making the decision on? That is coming from the
Sure.
Yes.
No.
So we'll use their standard, but we don't have to. We can go beyond that standard.
Sure, and that's what we're saying. We will.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think we just can't equate low risk exposure with zero risk exposure. And, families may have very different reasons for why even a low risk exposure would cause them to modify their behaviors. Thank you for responding to that and for maybe reconsidering, how a family within a classroom cohort, maybe would be included in that, to know that their child had a exposure within the classroom.
Sure.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
I'll give it 45 seconds. If either 6-7 would like to call back in, or if anyone else has anything to say, and then I'll close public comment. All right, great. We're closing public comment, and we're going to move on now to items for Board of Education approval. The first one that we're going to tackle is in the area of governance. We have two policies. We have one policy in first reading, and we have a policy and its regulation to approve for second reading. For the policy in a first reading is really almost a bylaw. The board member participation of board meetings using electronic devices. This is new and obviously in response to the situation we find ourselves in. And the second reading is on policy 5420, reporting student progress.
We're gonna table 155.1 until next month.
Okay, that's fair. So yes, we need the motion to table. Well, actually, we just take no action on it, and it will table itself. So rereading the governance section, we're voting on the second reading of policy approval 5420 only. Reporting student progress. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All right, Justin motion, Jamie second. Any discussion on policy 5420 and its regulation? All right, seeing
No,
none?
no, wait, just
Oh.
slow down 1 minute. I'm just I wanted to open it up. Is this the one that
It was just,
Chuck and Gina were gonna look at with the grades?
no, it
No.
was just updating the number of report cards that were issued.
Perfect, got it. We're good.
Yes, this was a procedural update, but needed to be done in both sections. To call the question on governance, 10, Mr. Catalano?
Ms. Kutner? Ms.
Sorry,
Kutner?
yes, trying to unmute, yes.
Ms. Hoag?
Yes.
Ms. Paisley?
Yes.
Ms. Coger?
Yes.
Mr. Bedford?
Yes.
Vice President Seidel?
Yes?
Mr. Vecchio?
Yes.
Ms. Crockett?
Yes.
All right. In the next section of curriculum and special education, we are going to be approving our monthly list of field trips, conferences, travel, and overnight field trips. There are no overnight field trips. We are a resolution to approve the settlement agreement for student 64287-49475. We were briefed on that in executive session last time. Resolution to approve full-year student-teacher internships with Rowan University for 2 folks with their mentor. The approval of the Camden County Technical Schools tuition contract for the 2021 school year. A resolution between Dr. Rotter and the Haddonfield Board of Education for blind and visual impaired research and report writing. A resolution between the Yale School and 7 students that need special services with them for 180 days each. A resolution between Camden County Educational Services Commission and us for a part-time speech therapist at the previously approved rate. We're for work to not exceed $34,272 for this entire school year. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Heather?
Second.
Jamie second. Any discussion? All right, seeing none. Recall the question.
Ms. Hoag? Ms. Paoli?
Yes.
Ms. Coger?
Yes.
Mr. Bedford?
Yes.
Vice President Seidel?
Yes.
Mr. Vecchio?
Yes.
Ms. Crockett?
Yes.
Ms. Kutner?
Yes.
Mike, real quick, should I have, what's the word? Do I need to abstain from G because I sit on the Camden County Executive Educational Services? No, I don't have to.
Good question. The next area is personnel. We're approving new personnel transfers, salary upgrades, mentors, extracurricular coaching appointments, leaves of absences and resignations. A resolution to increase the hours for a TATEM educational assistant for 15 to 17 hours a week due to temperature taking activities that have increased their workload. And it will be as long as necessary. And then a resolution to approve a new bus driver. Is this a new bus driver? I should have said just new. Resolution to approve a driver for following out of district routes, which is in correlation with the students being taken to the Yale School and another location. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Jamie?
Second.
Lynn? Any discussion?
Can I say something?
Sure.
If you notice on the personnel list, there's retirement at the high school, the HMHS secretary, Angela Marcello. If you've been in the high school for the last 25 or 26 years, you know Angela well. She embodies what this place is about and what's important. She loves the kids love her. She's always got a smile on her face. I think she works, I'm not exaggerating, 100 hours a week. I'm really not. So if we were to get John Miller to say, pull up all the work from home data for the last 2 years, Angela has won every single year. I think she gets here about 5 in the morning, not kidding. She stays until 5 at night. This place has been, this place is a better place with her and will be a lesser place without her. So I think this is one of the ones, you hear the joke all the time. She gave me her letter of retirement the other day. I threw it in the trash. I wouldn't take it. I finally had to go back and get it. You always want to, deny this from someone. But I'm happy for Ann. She's going to be retiring. But what an amazing loss for this building, this district. So just wanted to point that out.
Oh,
That's a
thank you,
really
Chip.
nice send off.
All right, seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on 12.
Ms. Paoli,
Yes.
Ms. Hogarth, Mr. Benford,
Yes.
Vice President Seidel,
Yes.
Mr. Vecchio,
Yes.
Ms. Crockett,
Yes.
Ms. Kudner,
Yes.
Ms. Hoag.
Next, we'll move to the approval of business and finance recommendations. We're approving tuition reimbursement for an employee who took a course. An appointment of Inspira Health Network as the district school physician. We are not changing physicians. The physician changed networks. So we're just updating the contract there. Approval for the use of HEPA pure air purifier systems in district buildings and locations that don't have windows. The payment of bills, our monthly roster of checks, and budget transfers for the month of August 2020. The board secretary's report and the cash summary report. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Justin?
Second.
Lynn?
Done.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call the question on 13.
Ms. Hogarth,
Yes.
Mr. Benford,
Yes.
Vice President Seidel,
Yes, abstain on 13D.
Mr. Vecchio,
Yes.
Ms. Crockett,
Yes.
Ms. Kudner,
Yes.
Ms. Hoag,
Yes.
Ms. Paoli,
Yes.
Just to explain, sometimes you pay my employer and sometimes you pay a company that I sit on a client advisory board for. This so happens to be the latter. So sorry about that. And then the last area for approval are the minutes. The regular meeting of August 27th, the executive meeting of August 27th, and the regular meeting of September 3rd, all in 2020. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Linda, Jamie, all right. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, super. Mr. Catalano, please.
Mr. Benford,
Yes.
Vice President Seidel,
Yes.
Mr. Vecchio,
Yes.
Ms. Crockett,
Yes.
Ms. Kudner,
Yes.
Ms. Hoag,
Yes, but abstain from A and B.
Ms. Paoli,
Yes.
Ms. Hogarth.
Yes.
All right, open up the floor to the board for any items for future consideration.
Just two, maybe three. One, winter sports. I'm just curious what that's going to look like. A lot of discussion around sports like indoor basketball. So curious about that. So I'd love to hear about that at some point. The second is not really related to, just purely, getting back to school, full time. But we launched, under certain circumstances, and we put certain things in place, 2 days in, 3 days out. But I'm curious, is that still, are there adjustments to those days that we want to make? And how would we decide to make those? So, we're doing the testing right now. So are we going to wait to see what the testing comes back? And if the testing comes back and we say, you know what, we feel like our kids are kind of falling behind at that point, are we going to change, the number of touch points and FaceTime and things like that? Because we've talked a lot about FaceTime and we've said FaceTime for the sake of FaceTime. It just doesn't make sense. It's about the quality of those contacts. But I'm just curious, based on the progress to date, whether we think any adjustments need to be made and how we would decide to make those adjustments. That's the second one. And the third is just kind of a reminder that Alpha Best, had an informational session. I wasn't able to attend, but I don't know if there are any takeaways that came out of that. But we spent a lot of time on that RFP, So I want to make sure that the community continues to get the benefit of that, especially as we hopefully ramp up.
So I don't know if you're gonna give feedback on Alpha Best in the future, but to second on Justin's second point, I don't know if the administration would consider, if it makes sense, to potentially send out another survey in the near future about parents or children's experience with the school. My anecdotal feedback that I've gotten is that a lot of the experience in the middle school and the high school, people have been super impressed. And I think sometimes there's challenges with the younger grades that through no fault of the teachers, but just the difficulty of teaching those grades remotely. So that's anecdotal. There could be, improvements at all grades. But I also want to say, I think everybody's done a fabulous job, from the teachers to the administrators to the buildings and grounds crew, but perhaps it would be good to get a survey out if it's manageable.
Yeah, we certainly are going to reach out for feedback. We have the survey coming up. It's more of an SEL-based survey. So we don't want to over survey, but we definitely are going to reach out for feedback. So I talk to people almost every day about hearing what's going on with those things. And so do all the principals, and we are under a constant self-evaluation, right? And, one of the challenges, we're 3 weeks in, and the Wednesdays have been weird because we had Lincoln one Wednesday and then a delay. So we're still figuring the model out. But if we feel we can do something better, we won't hesitate to make a change, right? We'll look into that.
Yeah, I can add a little more detail. The survey that our SEL teams are working on, the scope of the surveys go a bit beyond just what we typically consider SEL. Currently, the 6 topics under consideration are 1, academic needs, 2, cultural awareness and action, 3, student engagement, 4, student relationships, 5, the learning model, and 6, school public health measures. And right now, we're targeting an October release date on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like the idea of a survey. Just curious, soup to nuts, both, when you're in person and when you're virtually, whether there are any adjustments, if we're maximizing really, they're in 2 days a week, are we really maximizing the learning during those days on the right things? Maybe we are, maybe there are adjustments, but I'm curious to hear.
One of the things that it's not necessarily an item for consideration as a topic, but as a part of a topic, and that's, you said we're gonna have a busy October talking about what our plans might look like for increasing touch points in the building for students. And it's something that Dr. Priello just talked about on the SEL side, and that is kind of gauging community tolerance. I don't know a better word to say it, about what experience would look like at the different school levels. Because right now there's a lot of, it's the same. It's equitable, that everyone is under 2 days and 3 days. It doesn't matter if you're a high school student, a middle school student, an elementary school student, but those 3 groups have special needs. I mean, I think like 6th graders, they were all in different schools. And this would be the time for them to kind of get, on the social emotional side, friends from schools that they didn't have before. So a possibility of a Wednesday could be bringing the whole 6th grade together. That's certainly not equitable, but is it a good decision to do? Maybe. So I would put that on. And then the same thing at the high school levels. Maybe bringing a whole class together so that they don't lose touch with the folks that just so happen to not have the same bank of last names as others. And I'm sure there are formative targets. And I just would, the word that keeps coming to my brain that I don't want to say is courage, right? But the courage to do what's right and not just for sake of equity.
Flexibility.
Yeah, right. The courage of, or the ability of flexibility, but sometimes you're just targeting grades because of a formative need on the SEL side, and not just that, hey, you did it for the 6th grade, why aren't you doing it for the 7th grade? Well, they don't have the same needs that they might have had.
And that would go for if we can increase in-person instruction for certain populations, you increase it for the populations who need it the most, and it would not be equal, but it'd be the right thing to do. So I go along with that. So all those type of things are being looked at in consideration. I don't know that we thought about bringing everyone on a Wednesday, like all the sixth graders, but I mean, certainly something we can look at. I know the high school was batted around, but I think one of the challenges was, what would you do? Because you can't come together, right? So you have to come up with activities you can do while still apart. And to put 200 kids on the football field is really taxing that area, right? So, but to your point, if we can start to flex muscles in one area per se, we be by who needs those muscles flexed the most, who can use that time the most, not make sure if we get 5 hours to do this, not everyone gets an hour. Maybe one group gets 3 hours, one gets 2 hours, and the other groups have to wait till next time.
Fair, thank you. All right, it sounds like we've run out of steam. So I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the public meeting. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Justin, second Heather. Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those-
Aye.
Keep it to yourself. Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, Susan.